in a couple of minutes. Unfortunately, today's webinar is going to be slightly shorter, for 45 minutes, 30 minutes for the presentation, and another 15 minutes for questions and answers. I would try to finish up the presentation earlier than 30 minutes, and so that we can open the floor up for questions. I want to say a very big thank you for joining us today. Thanks everyone who's joining us. We talked about Lane a couple of times, but for the sake of anyone who's joining us for the first time, I'm just going to briefly talk about Lane. Lane is, for us, Lane is much more than a platform. An aspirational mode is to build a virtual city where we can leverage our MBAs to sort of transform the continent as a whole. And where we start that from is trying to lower the barrier to entry into MBA programs that we can afford by opening up that world of information to a whole lot of people. There's still many people out there who do not understand that you can get an MBA without paying a dime for it. You can get an MBA paying an amount that you can afford. You can get an MBA by taking a loan. Some people don't even know they have access to loans. And all that information is pretty much hidden from them. We believe that the more people who can get into an MBA program, at least a portion of that people would be willing to come back to the continent. And even if they are not, even if a portion does not come back to the continent, a portion would still be able to support the growth of, I keep saying the continent, and it sounds like it's really big, but the whole population of Africa is not up to that of China. And we all know where China is right now. So it might sound like a very lofty dream. It is something that I think that we can all achieve if we put the time and art to it. It takes years to build countries. It takes years to build continents. And if there's a plan around that, starting with the MBA, then it's possible for us to push that up and achieve our goals. So today's presentation, I'm going to share my slide with you in a couple of minutes. It will be handled by me. Okay, I'm trying to share my slide right now. Okay, so today's topic is what to get out of work. And I think the very reason why we decided to speak about this topic today is for two reasons. First of all, in the last webinar, someone mentioned how difficult it was for her to get information out of work when she was trying to modify and improve her CV. Information around numbers that it took her a really long time to get her employer to send information across to her. When you're in a location, it's quite easy for you to just walk into the office of someone and say, you know what, even though you're not free to do this for me, can I just borrow your laptop for a couple of minutes and download what you need to download or copy what you need to copy, depending on the internet policy of your company. It'll be easier when you're there in person as when you are miles away from that person, and it might take forever, weeks before they open their laptop to attend to your queries. So I felt it would be necessary to pinpoint that right now before we leave for MBA programs. And this includes those who are those who would be leaving in fall, God willing, and hopefully we'll find a good cure to the pandemic. And for those who would not be leaving until fall, until next year's fall, I think this topic speaks to both categories, because you must be playing the groundwork right now for you to start gathering all the kind of information that you need before you start your MBA program. Now, with respect to this, our webinar content today is going to be why it's split into 4 sections. I'll talk about why it is important, and I'll move on to what exactly you need to get out of your workplace. And then I'll talk about how you can gather these documents, and I'll open the webinar up for questions and answer, for a question and answer session. So why exactly is this webinar important? I think you must note, and I think I already started talking about it, you must note that it might take you, what would normally take you 30 minutes, might take somebody else 3 weeks to send across to you because you are not there in person. The second reason why this is important is because of one single document that is really important for your MBA, which is your resume. As you resume school and you work with the career service, you would have them walk through your resume and ask you questions that you never thought about. For instance, what is the revenue base of your current department? What is the size of your company? How much does your company generate? What's the value of the project you worked on? How many people did you work with? Can we get a letter of recommendation for you? When we do background checks in your workplace, can people vet all this information you provided? These are some of the reasons why it's important to start laying the groundwork or start preparing those people who will be responsible for providing those details to understand what you are presented in your document. So your resume is one key thing that gets you the job, but there's no way you can prepare your resume if you don't have the right content. And there's no way you can get the right content if you for some reason are unable to get the required information that you need from your place of work. And when I say out of work, I'm not just limiting it to your current place of employment. I'm also referring to your previous place of employment. Now that you're still in Nigeria, you can pick up your phone and make calls. Now is the time to get all that details out. So what are the things you must get out of your workplace? They're split into three major brackets. There's the numbers that you need to get, there are recommendations you need to get, and there are documents or models or whatever thing that you created to improve or make your work better. Now, let's take a look at numbers. With numbers, what we are basically referring to is numbers. It's just as simple as that. When we talk about numbers is split into four major categories. There is the numbers that has to do with your company. So details like the size of your company, what is the market cap of your company? Is it a Fortune 500 or a Fortune 1000 company? You need to get that detail. How do you get that detail? If your company is publicly traded or you have your annual income statement, even if that may not be something you can access as an employer, there are ways to get those details out of your colleague or out of your senior colleagues, out of the management, without them actually releasing that document to you. The second area is around, I talked about size. I already talked about, the first point I made is around financial. The second point I want to make is around size. Size in terms of how many employers does your company have? I know my employer has over 90 offices across 20-something countries. That details is not on our website, but it's in the company's brochure that I could just pick up and read through it. Details like what is the current head count of your company? What's the current head count of your department? And things that might be really difficult for you to make a phone call through to your department head who might not know that information, but would have to dig through certain documents that is in no mood to check just because she asked him to check. The third category is ranking. What are some of the ranks that your ranking system or ranking profiles that your company belong to? Search through that. Ask questions around with people who have been in the company for a very long time. For instance, I didn't know my company was on the Fortune 50 Change the World rank. I didn't know about that. So even though my company is not a Fortune 1000 company, it is profiled by Fortune companies. So aside from Fortune 1000, Fortune 500, there's Fortune Global, there's Fortune Europe. There's so many brackets. Find out if your company falls under any of these brackets, and do make sure to include Fortune X, whatever that X stands for, in your resume or in your notepad, collecting all this detail. You can take a screenshot of this and make sure that you write that down in your notepad, even though you may not have space for it in your resume right now. Understand that when you begin to really delve into your resume, you will need these details. When you delve into your resume again, it's not necessary that you get the exact estimate, exact value. An estimate is fine. No one would question you for rounding up 2.8 billion naira to approximately 3 billion naira. Maybe people will talk, but the truth about it is a rounded up value. Or maybe I should make it a bit closer, 2.9 something to 3 billion. But the point is, you're looking for a ballpark figure and not the exact figure. Awards are some of the things that you may not get if you're making phone calls. For instance, the person you're calling might have no idea about an award the company won a couple of weeks ago, especially if you're a multinational company where the award is at the national level and maybe your local office is not so into making that announcement. Digging deep into your company's intranet or your company's website or your company's online library is one way to get all this information. The third category, the second general bucket, bigger bucket, is your projects. Every single project that you've handled. I'm sure if I question one or two people, or I've been in situations where I've asked people, can you list out all the projects you've done in your 5 years in this company? People are struggling to get it because we don't have a culture of keeping records of all the things we do. We don't engage in projects with the mindset that there must be achievements at the end of the day from those buckets. So if you are currently at your workplace, there's still about 3 months to achieve things. If you're going to school next year, good for you. Maybe now is the time for you to start sitting down, to start to sit down and think about all the projects that you carried out. Think about the project value. Think about the duration. How long was it projected and what was the actual? So if by the means of you doing something, you were able to shorten the project duration by X amount, good. That's something that could go on your CV. If by your involvement, the project value reduced by a certain amount of money, ask questions around project value. I'm not sure we have that culture where we can walk up to our superior and say, so this project I'm working on, how much does it cost? There are ways to ask that question, and you must ask questions like that. Any other numbers involved in terms of the ranking, in terms of the client. Your client, for instance, could be could be a Fortune 50 company. Ask questions about your clients. What exactly are their market base and things around that you need to take note of? I think those are very important information that you need to cover. Under numbers, you have, again, the third category is the department. The department you belong to, I assume that your company is large enough to be broken down into departments. If that is true, then you need to look at the size in terms of revenue and numbers. How much is your department generating? How large is your department in terms of head count? What is the hierarchy structure in your department? What is the turnover contribution? How much is your department contributing to the local office? How much is your local office contributing to the global office? Those details, people might think that you're praying, but you know that you need all these details and you should not be shy to get the details. The other category is what I call others. And I call them others because they're not really attached to numbers. For instance, when I say describe the context of your project that you carried out, many people may not be able to describe that context. For instance, I worked on a project that was cost saving, that saved the company about $110,000 in software costs. And that happened during the 2016 recession. That's a context. Was your company running out of money and this project happened to be the most crucial project that it must win to stay afloat? These are things that context and data that you must be able to build about it. Ask your employer, how is this project important to us? Is it helping us get return business? For instance, I once worked on a project that brought us return project of X amount of money. You must gather that detail and get it down. When I talk about tax, I'm not talking about your work job description. I'm talking about the things that you actually did. Talk about all actions. I'm talking about those things that are not in your roles or your responsibility that you did. It's a bit different from tax. Tax are not they are not your job role description. They are those precise things within, it's a subset of your job description that you did on that project. So for instance, on one project, you might be responsible for gathering documents. On another project, you may not be responsible for doing that. You may be responsible for managing a team. So you want to be clear on what exactly you did and make sure that you document that. The second thing you need to gather is around recommendation. Recommendation, again, is split into three areas, and that for different purposes. For instance, for admission, many of you would be close enough to your supervisor for them to write out a letter of recommendation for you. Many of you would not want your current employer to know you're going to business school. But even if you don't want your current employer to go to business school, understand that your job would carry out a job vetting process. They will reach out to your company and they would like to speak about the jobs that you've done. So you want to identify 2 to 3 or 2 to 5 people, depending on how large your company is, that you can prime, people that you can trust, people that can write letter of recommendation for you. For instance, I have a letter of recommendation to whom it may concern that I'm sure I can use, and I know if they call this person up, this person can say, yes, I provided this so and so person with these details and this content. The other kind of recommendation is not written. It is verbal. And that has to do with those in the HR office. And that's what I mean by saying admin. Not just admin, but HR office. Your HR arm is the very first arm they will reach out to. If you do not have a good relationship with your HR arm, I know in many cases, many people don't have good relationships with HR. If you don't, they will mess you up when they call to vet how well you did at your current place of work. So make sure you're building and you're priming people. Think about recommendation, not just as what they will write down, but as what they would say about you if someone make inquiries. I know someone has called me up to actually speak to someone's job. And how did they get to know the person? They saw that I wrote a recommendation for that person on LinkedIn. And they called to be sure that I actually meant what I said. And I said, yes, I meant what I said. And I'm thinking if they could call me, I can imagine the kind of calls that different HR offices are getting on a daily basis or on a monthly basis to really validate the story about what you did at work. So the last category is the documents created by you. And they're split into two, those that you created to improve your work or documents that show what you did. Begin to gather all that. If you built an Excel model, if you built a model, if you wrote a program, if you rewrote a workflow process, if you submitted a presentation to the chairman, if you anything that is proprietary, your own knowledge, please don't just leave it in your office intranet. Make sure that you have a copy of that to remind you of what you did, or for you to be able to even draw information to build your cover letter, your essay, or your resume at all. Those are the three categories of documents that you need. You need 1, numbers, you need recommendations, 2, and 3, you need documents created by you. So how do you get these things? To get these things can be pretty tricky, especially if you're working in Nigeria where we don't have the culture of keeping these details. I think we're shaped after the European way of placing roles and responsibilities ahead of achievement. And if you're applying to schools, business schools, mostly American, and the American system of showing achievement has influenced many other schools you'll be applying to. So one thing I would advise you to do is gather that information while it is still fresh. This is usually applicable to those who are going to go to business school next year. You'll be going through projects right now that you would need to put together. Again, please, if you're joining, just mute yourself. You'll be going through projects right now that you'll be gathering data, make inquiries right now, because the older the information you're making inquiries about, the more eyebrows you raise. If you have to raise eyebrows, no problem. But if you have to get that information, you have access to getting that information while it is still fresh, why not gather that information ASAP and make sure that it is clear? So gather it while it is still fresh. The second point is archive search. So before you go and ask somebody for details, ask yourself, can I get this from some document, from some archive? In my case, I had to parley with the IT head. The IT head, for some reason, shared my name, and we had close relationship. Again, you might not be able to go through bureaucratic needs of writing document or making. If somebody pushes you to do that, no, you may be going down a dead end in Nigeria. And this may not be applicable abroad. This may not, but we know the system we run in this country. Somebody is saying, write a letter to the HOD and all that, write a letter to so and so. Just know maybe you are going down the hardest route. Be friends, and this all relies with your information. There are things that, and I'm not encouraging you to violate any company policy, but I am telling you for a fact that as against writing a letter to somebody who will send the letter to somebody, by the time you start leaving digital footprint, people begin to get weary of not having anything attached to their name. So even if you write a letter to the HOD of the IT department to request for information, even though it is within his own power to release that information to you, my dear, he doesn't know what you would use that information for, right? And since you've already sent that letter to him, if he sends it to him and uses it wrongly, what happens to him? His neck is on the line. His head is on the line. So he's going to push it. Everyone will push it till it gets to the board directors or the director of board directors, basically. And just know that it might take 1 year before you get the information from you. As against walking to the office of the HOD and really thinking about, you know what, we have a relationship. How's your son? And that's how I personally did it. You know, I got really close, not because I wanted to be a psychophant. No, first of all, I genuinely meant those things that I was saying. And I know what I did to help the child of someone who was heading a crucial department that I needed information from. I know what I did to help his son with respect to the application. So these are ways to build relationship outside of work, that when it comes to making inquiries around, which is taking me to the personal relationship area, when it comes to making inquiries about some of these things, you can leverage that personal relationship, and they can tell you, you know what, off the record, I'm not the one who told you, but you got that information that you need, and you can be sure that that information is true. Again, gather it while it is fresh. If it's no longer fresh, check if you can get it online or within your company's online library that you may no longer have access to once you resign that job and say you're going for MBA. And then leverage your personal relationship where the two other methods fail. So that brings us to the end of this webinar. I'm going to open the floor up to anyone who has questions. You can unmute yourself and throw your question out there.
Hi, Samuel. Thank you so much for that really amazing presentation. This is Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
Yeah, so my question is tailored in two forms. So for someone like me, and for other people that might be listening, that our intention for going for an MBA is to make a career switch. And for me, I'm thinking, how do my job experiences, so I'm a lawyer, so but I want to do a career switch. So how do my experiences, one, as a lawyer, how do I need to package it in such a way in my CV that will still make because, you know, most people that just go, maybe if you're consulting, it's easy for the school to see, oh, you have so much experience in consulting and you also want to come for the MBA to maybe continue or progress or something like that. But for law, you're switching careers. So how do you package your CV in a way that still shows that you're very good at what you do, but you still have an intention of switching? And two, particularly with recommendations. So how do you get recommendation from your bosses when you want to switch careers, considering that they only know you as a lawyer, but they don't know how competent or how well you'll be at in the new field of career you're switching to? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your question. I think that's a burning question on the minds of a lot of people. First of all, you must understand that to get your internship, you'll have to rely heavily on your present knowledge or your work experience. So don't think that your 2 years of an MBA experience will negate everything you've done in the past 5 years. what you've done in the past 5 years would at least contribute to 70% of the potential of you getting a job. Now, there's something I'm drawing right now on your screen. If you can see that, I have a whiteboard, and I'm going to use that to explain what I'm talking about. We have basic skills, desirable skills that any employer, irrespective of the industry, would always love. They're sometimes called life skills. One of them is problem-solving skills. Irrespective of your industry, if you can solve a problem as a lawyer, you can solve a problem as a consultant. You can solve a problem as a product manager head. You can solve a problem in any role. So when you're crafting your resume, you're not crafting your resume for industry terms. You're crafting your resume for those underlying skills that are desirable to employers. Another is leadership. So managing a team, perhaps you manage the portion of the chamber. I don't know how that operates in the legal world. Maybe you're managing a team, that's relationship, communication skills. Communication skills can be shown by presentations. And I know lawyers do a lot of communication. The other one that can be leveraged upon is ability, reliability. Can people trust you? You can show reliability by the kind of jobs that has been assigned to you. You can show again, that word is a tongue twister for me. You can show that you're reliable by showing the amount of work above your pay grade that you're carrying out. Something else that you can equally show that many companies are looking for is your analytical skills. Analytical skills transcend all areas. So you looked at the problem from one perspective, you broke it down into X, Y, and Z, you prioritized X, and you found out that X is the biggest driver of the problem, and you addressed X. That is something. Organizational skills. Were you working in a department where everything was not going on fine, but you came in and you used your personal influence, which is still under leadership, personal influence to get the head of that department to transform that department into a different. So that is what many employers are looking for in your resume. They don't care about the exact nature of what you did. All these things transcend the industry you want to work with. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Very well. Okay. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Yeah. Any other question? Please just unmute yourself and throw your question out there. Okay, while I wait for any other question, I'll just touch on a topic that many of us feel to, and this goes out to everybody. There's one thing I've been seeing lately, that if you go into your MBA believing that an MBA will transform your life in its own self, you may be in for a big shock. And again, I'm in the same boat as with regards to people moving from Nigeria to the MBA program. But my conversation with a whole lot of people shows that the apple does not fall far away from the tree. Your apple is your MBA experience and your ability to get the job that you need. The tree is your past work experience. So don't try going into your MBA program looking for a way to forget or to hide your past work experience. No. Look for a way to dig out the gold and polish and refine the gold in your past work experience. It will take time. Don't wait for career service to do that for you. Don't wait for career service to do that for you. Start reaching out. I mean, for those who are attending the Poet and Quant event, I'm glad that John Barnes mentioned something that I think is really, really, really important. Reach out to students in your MBA program that can get you a resume, look at it, and help you polish it out. So don't try to throw out your don't try to throw out your experience. For those who are going to be going to the MBA program next year, don't try to forget your work. Embrace it, polish it, and make sure you are addressing it from the right angle. The other thing I want to point out to is one job that you did can be crafted into 5 bullet points. And I'm not saying you should do that, but can be attacked from different angles. For instance, in a project where you trying to pick an example that we all can relate to it. If, for instance, your unit was responsible for organizing an outreach to a community, that same project, someone would attack that project or address that project in their resume from the angle of leadership. I led X number of teams to do X, Y, and Z. Another person will attack that same project from the angle of fundraising. I was responsible for ensuring that all our patrons and all our sponsors contributed X amount of money to the success of the project. Same achievement, but different roles and responsibility. You can also attack it from the angle of planning or project development. So I was responsible for coordinating all the things we carried out during that project. You can attack it from the angle of conflict resolution. X, Y, and Z was going to mess up the project that we... X, Y, and Z was going to mess up the project that we were going to do, but I came in and my negotiation skills sorted it out. You can attack it from the angle of collaboration. So one bullet point can be addressed from leadership perspective, being analytical, being a problem solver, being able to influence people. Just understand that as you're crafting all your bullet points, make sure that not all the bullet points is heading in one direction. Let a team, 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 spearheaded a team, led a team, led a team, led a team, coordinated a team. No, no. We don't want your resume to rhyme like that. Or you don't even want your resume to rhyme like that. You want to look at led a team, analyzed, incorporated, spearheaded, reduced, things like that. So you need to look at your involvement at work in a very holistic perspective. Beyond the technicalities of this job, what exactly have I done? And I think by trying to dig that deep inside, you will find juice or you find ice cream in your what's this Domino's pizza counterpart? But you get the idea. I'm just trying to be proverbial there, and that didn't work out clearly. Any case, in any ways, it's almost the end of this webinar. So if you have any other question, please just unmute yourself and ask before we call it a day.
Hi, sorry, this is Daniel again.
Okay. Hi, Daniel. Good.
Yeah. So for me, and that's one of the biggest issues I've been trying to wrap my head around, is for people that are switching careers. And maybe for some reason, I haven't been able to like talk to any MBA student that actually went through that route of switching careers, because, for example, from what you've just said, that your previous experience is very important as to the jobs you will get even after the MBA program. So
yeah,
I'm assuming it's even beyond your analytical skills. Now they want to see like transactional. So for example, for people that are maybe that consultant, they want to see transactions you've handled, they want to see, but for you that you're switching careers and you're moving from law to something entirely different. So now, is it your level of network you will use to maybe get a job? Because now there's so much they can look back as to the experience you've had before to determine how well you will fit in a particular role. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around the selling points for people in that category.
Okay. So thank you very much for your question. I think it's a very good question. When you talk about some of the things that you need to, the very first step is to look at what skills are desirable in this industry. Take, for instance, you can be a product manager in Google without having any single coding skills. So, Kim, I'll come back to your question. Just give me a minute. You need to go back to your industry that you would like to switch to and identify those skills they are looking for.
First of all, I ate this bread, and then
okay.
I
Mute. So, so as I was saying, you can look at what is desirable in your industry. Once you get that qualities that are desirable in your industry, look at what you've done that has that quality. If you're switching from law to consulting, I am telling you, it is the best switch that you can ever have. As a lawyer, you have analytical skills, cracking cases and breaking it down and being able to win cases in the law court is a skill that consultants highly value. So you want to think about going on to LinkedIn and searching lawyers who have become, again, it starts with networking, right? Because if you network your way really well, you'll find someone who has done that switch or made that jump that you would like to make. But I'm sure that in future webinars, we will take this down. I'm sure we're taking note of these areas around understanding job switchers and how they can comfortably and what they're required to start doing right now as they look to make the career switch that they want. So thank you for raising that, Daniel. Okay, Uzana, your question. Sure. Okay, I thought Uzana was raising her hands. In the absence of any further question, Uzana, are you saying something? Okay, so Ozana unfortunately will be unable to take your question at the moment. Please take note of that. I'm sure that we can turn that question of yours into a potential webinar for future episodes. On that note, I want to say a very big thank you to all the people who have joined us. Ozana, Marachi, Daniel, Joy, Lake, Ahmed, Shegun, who else? Kim was in for a while. Thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you next week with another webinar from Lane that hopefully would add value to your MBA journey. So on that note, I say good night and bye for now. Stay safe, please.